All right, Bruchim Aboyim, welcome everyone. I feel totally inadequate to be talking about this subject, and I'm only really doing so in a very, trying to be very calculated, which is difficult for me to do. I'm a very emotional person, and I talk off the cuff, and I don't like to plan ahead, and I just like to talk, and I have a big mouth. And yet, I felt a certain achrayus to talk about, in some way, this issue here. Very, very choshev in German in New Jersey, Rabbi Pesach Sommer, Talmud Chacham, wrote the following, and this will be kind of the springboard for the rest of the discussion. I'm seeing a lot of posts about Shlomo Carlebach's 30th yahrzeit, including a big concert that happened in Israel. While he had a positive impact on countless lives, and his music helps many people connect with davening, he was a deeply flawed human being, and most definitely not a tzaddik, and remembrance of his life that pretends otherwise is deeply problematic. Now, Rabbi Sommer, was extremely balanced in what he said here, and there was a lot of emotions on both sides of this issue. And I want to maybe go through a little bit of this issue as far as my own personal experiences. I never met Shlomo Carlebach. I met many of his students over the years, his direct students and people who knew him, and people who were uplifted by him and people who were hurt by him. And he was a very complicated person. Now, if you want to go along the lines of Amech Kulam Tzadikim, so then there's no place to have a devotion to, and I see people are already commenting on my comments on this, to have a devotion to this person while when one was not directly a student of his. People should be knowledgeable and understanding. So, and I remember my own struggles with this particular individual. And so growing up, coming to Yiddishkeit as a teenager, becoming Baal Tshuva, I know I usually try to translate all of my Torah into a clear English. I'm not doing that right now, particularly because this is an internal matter that probably shouldn't even be on YouTube at all, except for the fact of the matter that it's a subject that's come up now. And I also, in some small way, would like to make some kind of a tikkun, and collectively that we can make a tikkun for this neshama. We've certainly accomplished a lot of incredible great things, while being well known, even in his time, to be, we would say, complicated and certainly someone who might be orthodoxic without being orthopraxic, which we all are to a certain extent. And he was very open about his lack of orthopraxy, his lack of keeping halacha in an open way. And again, everybody behind the scenes has some skeletons in the closet. Nobody's perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. I'm no one to judge him, and I'm not here to judge Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. I'm here more to discuss the issues that relate to us here and now in this Olam Ha'asiyah that we exist in. Because some people were discussing, so before, let's go through my relationship with this archetype, because I never knew him. you know. But he became an archetype for me. I was a person who considered him to be a great tzaddik, and my personal opinions of him have changed. But I also seek, again, not that I'm anyone who can make tikkunim on the neshamas, but collectively, being the yortzeit, what can we do to make a tikkun for this neshama while not causing more damage? And so we're walking a very difficult tightrope. And it's interesting, his yortzeit is just around the yortzeit of another very flawed individual, Meir Kahana. And so I'll start with this. So when I published recently, and I didn't edit, I just, except for like spelling errors or things, but I didn't change things that I changed my mind about. I just put it out there. I published a book of my own writings from when I was a teenager. I was always a big bal gaiva. And so when I was a teenager, I would write divrei Torah for the school newspaper. I saved them. I had it on a website. I stopped paying for the website, so it's not available online anymore. If someone really just wants the divrei Torah that I wrote when I was a teenager, I prefer if you buy the book, but if for some reason you can't afford the book, I guess I could try to email you. It's not so easy. But I published a book on Amazon. I published several books on Amazon now. As I discussed on Friday, this phenomenon, this tremendous phenomenon of being able to publish books so easily and at really no cost, no upfront cost, that it's such a wonderful thing that we have today. And so I published the book of my writings, and I kept the name that I had called it 25 years ago, almost, Sichos Asadeh, because of Yetze Yitzchak L'Suach Basadeh. My Hebrew name's Yitzchak, and I grew up, I was living on a farm, so it's all those things were connected, and so it was interesting. By Shalashudis yesterday in my house, we don't have a minyan in my shul, and that's a complicated issue also. And it's largely because someone else started a minyan in his house 2 doors away from me, and my Rav says I can't daven there, and no one should daven there. I'm the only one who listens. So is this. And these are complicated things too, and I don't really need to talk about right now here and there. But how did it come about? Like, I have I don't have copies of all my books, but a few of them I had. Mostly I bought to give away to people who helped me out as a gift. And so I had a few copies of the Divrei Ol, and because my daughter said, at school, that they said even if you have, you should learn a Musar Sefer, even if you have Divrei Ol in Yiddish, learn some Musar. And that's what they told her. She learns in summer school. So she said, well, what about in English? I said, well, did you tell your teacher your father made a Divrei Ol in English? No, I'd be embarrassed. So let's look. And we looked at the Divrei Ol in English that I published, that one, and then which again you can get on Amazon. Teachings of the Satmar Rebbe. That's why I would recommend the full, because I have like individual volumes, and now I put them all into one volume. And so there's different versions that have. There's one version that has everything that pretty much that I was able to find and put together. The Divrei Ol and the full Hakdama to Real Moshe. So, and then after that, I was like, you know what? Hand me my book that I wrote, my own Torahs. And I opened up Parshas Vayera, and it was like, well, this week we have 2 yard sites of 2 of the greatest figures in the Kiruv movement. Right, the 16th of Mar Cheshvan is Shlomo Carlebach's yard site. and the 18th of March Cheshvan is Meir Kahana's yard site. And it was a story that I found online back then in the 90s about an interaction between Shlomo Carlebach and Meir Kahana. That again, Shlomo Carlebach, he always gave away all his money. He never had any money. So, and he would often beg and borrow. I don't know if he would steal, but he would certainly beg and borrow. And so he saw Meir Kahana one time, and he asked Meir Kahana, could I borrow a few dollars? So then he said yes. He lent him the money. Then he saw him next time. He gave him back the money, but was $1 short. So Meir Kahana said to Shlomo Carlebach, I don't mind, but you're $1 short. And he said, well, yeah, because the whole Klal Yisrael owes you so much, I also want to owe you something. Cute story. And then after that, I said a Dvar Torah about the Indian of Yitzchak Avinu being an Ola, but I wrote it in like a Shlomo Carlebach style. And but it was my own. It was my own. Like the first two things were like taken from Shlomo Carlebach and Meir Kahana websites in the 90s, and I was a big fan of both of them. And my Zayda of Shalom had some kesher. He had more of a kesher to Meir Kahana, but my Baba and Zayda did meet Shlomo Carlebach once. They would talk about how nice it was to meet him, and our Rav here, his son told me, like, once Shlomo Carlebach came to the shul, and like at the time, he was a little kid, and his shtick was he was collecting business cards. He asked Shlomo Carlebach, I have your business card, and he said, I don't have any business cards, but, so like these types of stories. And then the other story that Rabbi Weinberger would tell us, and, I could picture it so clearly, was that, Shlomo Carlebach made a concert in the Monticello Raceway. So this is my neighborhood, in Sullivan County, the Catskills. And so Rabbi Weinberger said he went, I guess him and his wife, they went to the concert, whatever it was in the 80s. And then after the concert, Rabbi Weinberger, he went to I'm assuming him and his wife, they went to the Rebbetzin, they went to Fialakov's Pizza. And Shlomo Carlebach was also there by Fialakov's Pizza. And I guess Shlomo Carlebach got paid cash for the concert. And a beggar came up to him, was collecting money, and the way Rabbi Weinberger described it, the guy was mentally ill, whatever, the Chassidish guy. And let's say whatever it was, Shlomo Carlebach got paid $5,000 for the concert, $10,000, I don't know, whatever it was. He gave him about half of the money. And then the beggar looked at him, and he said, Dibis Carlebach? He said, yeah. And then the beggar spit in Shlomo Carlebach's face. Everyone was shocked. Rabbi Weinberger saw this, but Einai Reisi, he tells this story. And then he said, Carlebach, he took all of the money he had that night and gave it all to the beggar. And he said, this is really tzedakah l'shem shamayim. He said, until now I thought you liked me, and if I give you money you like me more. Now that I know that you hate my guts, this is l'shem shamayim, such a mitzvah. How could I give up? And the truth of the matter is, that's part of the whole complicated thing, right? And also, an Ezra Academy story. So again, most of the Rebbeim at Ezra Academy, they love Shlomo Carlebach's music. So like, once, I guess Shlomo Carlebach came and performed at Ezra Academy. So then after, I guess Rabbi Weinberger and Rabbi Friedler and Rabbi Dax and Rabbi Freilich, they all went out because Shlomo Carlebach, he liked to eat pizza. And they all went out for pizza with Shlomo Carlebach. And then he said, Rabbi Dax still goes inside, very tamimistic and big Talmud Chacham, very ehrlich and tzaddik. And he's like, Shlomo, we love your music, but can you tell us why, please stop doing, because the open things everybody knew about, not the Bahaltana things. And he said, oh, whatever, and he sang a song and didn't have an answer. Now, I saw in a book where that's the way Rabbi Weinberg told the story. Maybe that's how he told us in high school. Maybe we hear a different story. Maybe if we ask Rabbi Dax, he'd have a different version. So I never asked Rabbi Dax about this. It was a whole, but, anyway. So, and I'm sorry I'm talking about people, but anyway, so then I saw an explanation Shlomo Carlebach tried to give in a book, that they quoted from him, was after he was nifter or whatever. So the story was that, and there's a tremendous depth to it, so he said, Shlomo Carlebach and Shlomi Zalman Schachter, Shlomi Schachter, he called himself, they were the two supposedly, or the way they tell the story, I don't think it's exactly true, they were the two first shluchim, not even from the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, but from the Rebbe Ayatz, and then it was only the last year or two from the Rebbe Ayatz, and then the last Lubavitcher Rebbe, they were shluchim of his at first, and then they both left Lubavitch, right? So Zalman Shlomi Schachter is a different story, but Shlomo Carlebach, this is the story he told. He said he made a concert and 100 kids showed up, and then he told them, I need to put up a mechitza, and half of them left, and then he said, and the girls can't sing, and then other 49 left. There was only one guy there, and he was kind of dumb, and what am I supposed to do? He said, Rebbe, to Lubavitcher Rebbe, Stern Levracha, if I what do you call it? If somebody's arm got cut off, you give them a Band-Aid. You need to do major surgery. So then the way he said it was, Lubavitch Rebbe told him, he said, I know what you want to do. I can't tell you yes, and I can't tell you no. But the one thing is, if you do go this way, you can't do it in my name. And that's when he left Lubavitch. But again, we're assuming that it's just that he gave hugs and kisses and that he didn't do more, And because that's what we thought back in the day. Nobody thought differently, So then, we thought that we never knew that it went further than that, right? The world didn't know about that. People knew, whatever, but the world didn't know. I remember my yeshiva his Rebbitzin saying, how bad things, she was lucky that she stayed away from him, type of things, his Rebbitzin. And so anyway, the point what I'm bringing out, or whatever, and then when he said, he saw one of Rashiva, Rabbi Branchspiegel's he said that one of his Talmidim from YU, I learned in Landers, but he saw the Amshin of a Rebbe crying by Shlomo Carlebach's kever, and then the Rebbitzin said, even a Rebbe could be wrong. The Rebbitzin Chassidus did, but which shows tremendous depth, but she didn't want to get more into the subject, So then interesting, just back to what Shlomo Carlebach, or what he was quoted as in the book or whatever. So he said he was upset to Lubavitcher Rebbe why he was so close-minded. He said if the Swami I don't remember Swami Satyajani, I know he had the place, the Ogilville in Virginia. If he could be at Woodstock, why wasn't the Lubavitcher Rebbe at Woodstock? What people don't know, though, is that although the Swami was the opening act, gave the opening prayers or whatever, who was at Woodstock was Rav Shlomo Freifeld, Zuchas Yidolenu. and he made Havdalah there, and he lived just up the block in the summer. I live up the block. I know where we're talking about. I think he could have walked there. I don't know. I think he probably needed to walk there, but he went and made Havdalah at Woodstock. So I heard. I don't know if it's true, but I lived down the road from where all that stuff happened, and I grew up, being told, "Oh, this is such a beautiful thing," and I don't think it was. I think, anymore, and I'm not a chassid of that either anymore, and I never really was so much, but I that's how I was raised, because my parents, hippies, this and that, So anyway, just to bring it out in the end, the whole point and everything. And again, because I'm no one to judge, but I think the worst thing anybody in a leadership position can do, particularly in a spiritual leadership position, can do, I think it's worse in a spiritual leadership position than in a work leadership position, to be honest, even though it's very bad in the work leadership position, is to abuse your power to do averos. And that's crossing a line that is much worse. If someone has a taiva and they keep a low profile, and like the Chazal say, lo v'shcharim esatev shcharim ye'elchem akim shein makirim yasam shli b'chafetz. Not that that's a chas v'sholem a heter to do averos, but they're saying if and hopefully doing all that will help you do tshuva, and you're not going to do it, and to overcome and to be miskaber. But sof kol sof, but to use your position, and so that's the thing. We all thought, he was giving hugs and kisses. All right, that's keneged halacha, but it wasn't necessarily abusive. So then when the Lilith magazine article came out, I was in denial. I was like, that's Lilith magazine. It's a left-wing magazine. They're liars. They just want to besmirch an Ner L'Chid, etc., etc. And the thing is, there are certain people that I believe are innocent that are in prison right now, accused of these types of things. There's two in particular that I believe are innocent. Maybe I'm wrong. I may be more masukik about one than the other. But anyway, and working in prison and knowing these people personally is a different story. But the point that I'm bringing out with all of this is, so the story. So what made me change my mind about Shlomo Carlebach? And it's interesting because most people say they love his music. I don't dislike it. Certain nigunim I like better than others, but his stories, I love the stories. I love listening to Shlomo Carlebach sing the stories more than singing music. That's just my personal, But I pretty much, for the most part, stopped listening to him. I play videos at work for different religions, and for Jewish, sometimes I'll also play Reform and Conservative. So here and there I'll play Shlomo Carlebach. And I remember one of the inmates, a non-Jewish inmate, he hand wrote a story of Shlomo Carlebach visiting a prison from, Chicken Soup for the Prisoner's Soul. And he hand copied it and gave it to me. And I have it up on my wall in my office. Not because of Shlomo Carlebach, but more because the inmate, before he left the prison, he wanted to share that, and he gave that as a gift to me. And I actually made copies of it and gave it to... It's interesting what happened. I have friends who are Hasidim from Shlomo Carlebach, so I made a photocopy of this, and I wanted to give it to a friend of mine. And something happened that it got ruined. I think I still gave it to him ruined, So anyway, what's the point of all of this? So what changed my mind was that hearing the stories from one Rebbe of mine, who I just happened, he wasn't was a Rebbe of mine in school. It was someone who was passing through my house when I was a Rav down south, and I'll read what I wrote. So, and this is what I have here. I used to be a big fan of his. Along the way, when I was a Rav out of town, I had a guest in my home who I quickly accepted as a Rebbe of mine. He told me about his brief first marriage and how he considers himself a victim of the above, of Shlomo Carlebach, because how he broke up his marriage and may have had an affair with his wife. When the latter confronted him about it, when he later confronted him about it, was a rather bizarre conversation. I'll give a little bit more details, so I'm not going to say who this Rebbe of mine is because he's a tzaddik nister, but the point that we're bringing out here is so the story was this particular younger man. He was interesting. I mean, this is a man who's now close to 80 years old, and a Breslover Chassid, and a big Talmud Chacham. And he was a Rav in different towns throughout the years. So he said when he first he was by Lubavitch, and then he went to Breslov because he had some issues with Lubavitch. He went to Breslov, and when he came to Breslov, he went to Shlomo Carlebach, and Shlomo Carlebach was Masar Kedushin. By his chasna, he had a quick engagement, a quick marriage. And he said he noticed the other rabbis there at the chasna seemed to be uncomfortable that Shlomo Carlebach was there. And I'm not going to get into the whole story, but Sof Kol Sof, this Rebbe of mine considers himself to be a victim of Shlomo Carlebach, because he said it like I described there. And he said, by his children's chasanas, he told the musicians, no Shlomo Carlebach, and like the musicians sometimes were like, how can you have a chasana without Shlomo? And he said, nope, not one Carlebach song. Because it triggers him so much emotionally because of what he went through. And he said, even though he recognizes all min hashamayim, but he went through a really awful experience because of this. And basically what it was so he thought maybe his wife was having an affair with Shlomo Carlebach, and she said, I'm not what he needs, but she was really like in love with Shlomo Carlebach, and like it was brought up in the divorce. And I don't want to get into all these details because it's a private, personal thing. But the punchline was that so Carlebach told the wife, asked for a divorce, and they quickly got divorced. And she was pregnant. She had a daughter, and the daughter never met the father, and then was years later, whatever. And the whole time, the mother stopped being frum, and she said all kinds of lies about her father and this and that. And then they, so it's a very painful, difficult story. But shortly after the divorce, so this rabbi, he said he was, and it was a very brief marriage also. And then Baruch Hashem, he got remarried and is with his zivug for the rest of his life, Baruch Hashem, and they should be together, the two of them, for the rest of their lives, Mitzvah Hashem. Ahava v'achva v'shalom v'reyes. It's already 40 years later, more. So anyway, 50 years later, whatever it is. Anyway, so this rabbi, he saw Shlomo Carlebach. And he said, Shlomo, what did you do to me? So he said, this is where, he came out what a charlatan he was. So he said, how dare you question me? This is what Shlomo Carlebach said to the senior man. He said, when I die, the malachim will carry my aron like the Abderav. You have no right to question me. Which sounds like the opposite of everything we heard about Shlomo Carlebach. Now, why am I telling this? What's the purpose of all this? Because here I told some nice stories about Shlomo Carlebach, and I told this story, and I don't know what's true. I wasn't there for any of it. But what I do know is that it's a very emotional thing on both sides. The people who are his chassidim, they love him, b'leiv v'nefesh, and a lot of people, and I don't think that's healthy for anybody. I don't think it's healthy about the biggest tzaddik in the world. I have a tremendous love for Satmar Rav, for Rav Victor Miller. I never knew Satmar Rav. He was nifter before my time. For Rav Victor Miller, I did meet. But do I blindly follow everything they teach? No. And some things yes, some things. As my Rosh Hashiva, who Zolgazun of Lazarus was Rosh Kol by Rav Victor Miller, and he said when Rav Victor Miller was nifter, he was my Rebbe, he was my Rav, but I don't agree with him 100% everything, right? And that's a healthy way. And the same thing, my local Rebbeim and everything. Certain things, when it's a halachic issue like the minyan, I'm staying true to this, and I get very emotional about that. But on the other side, it's the truth, and it's the halacha, and maybe I shouldn't get so emotional about it. But anyway, and I'm at work, and it's not time to talk anymore. But nobody should be blindly, following as a chassid of anybody. I don't care which rabbi, whatever. That's not a healthy thing. And we've seen a lot of unhealthy things come out of that type of approach. That's Aleph. But I understand, of course, that people who Shlomo Carlebach helped, and I remember talking to one of my friends, a big Kanoi, and he said, L'maisa, the mile of Shlomo Carlebach was that he sent people to real yeshivas. He would send people to the Mir and to Lakewood, not only to Chabad and whatever else, and Eshet Torah or whatever else. That was the way he said it. Some people he did send to Chabad, some people he did send to Eshet Torah, Samech, whatever. So that's Aleph. Or Samech would consider more mainstream. That's Aleph. And then, And I believe he must have done tshuva before he passed away. So as far as his neshama, and he was probably mistama constantly working out tshuva. He learned Ishbitz, and maybe his learning Ishbitz brought him into an antinomian place that Ishbitz never was supposed to be. And what this other Rebbe of mine, that I'm not mentioning his name, who considers himself a victim of his, he posited maybe that there is a Sabbatean or Frankist element in the antinomianism, and that Shlomo Carlebach actually believed that when he was doing his Averas, it was an Avera Lishma. And that is apikorsis. That is very dangerous. That's the most dangerous thing that we have, and there are elements in the Jewish world that either believe that or believed that or influenced by those who believed that. And there's been tremendous korbanos coming out of that. Whether it's Reform, whether it's Zionism, whether all these things that come that could be rooted in Sabbateanism and Frankism. And many of our tzaddikim fought very hard, especially, once the Sabbatean movement was revealed for what it was, and once the Frankist movement was revealed for what it was, that we have to ostracize and uproot these things. And other people disagreed, and it's a whole machlekes even among Ehrlich Yidden about that. That can we keep the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff? And there were tzaddikim who read the writings of my own Zayda, who I love, B'Lev Nefesh. I'm talking about the Chavos Yorer, had a big collection of Sabbatean literature. Now, does that mean that he was a Sabbatean? Does it mean he was just curious about it? He was a very curious person. He liked to read a lot of things. He was ambivalent. He was, I don't know. To some scholars assume that he was a Sabbatean. I think it's more complicated than that also. But that was before we knew, and I imagine once he started going on the bad way, on the other hand, he probably wasn't the type who's going to burn things because he wants to preserve the history, because it's an important historical thing. And to revise history is also dangerous, and we're living with a lot of revisionist history. and instead maybe we the famous story of all the different people who are getting their portrait taken, and the painter asks, "Can I paint the wart?" And he's like, "Yeah, but don't forget I have a nose also." And that's the thing. When we present history, warts and all, it's not forgetting that we have a nose. And I'm not forgetting Shlomo Carlebach had a nose despite his warts. You know. So anyway, that's the point. So I don't know. I'm kind of. It's time for me to go. It's late. But the point here's the point. So I'm not judging Shlomo Carlebach with his neshama. What I'm talking about is the archetype that we develop here on Earth. And I think people who are big Hasidim of his have to understand that he did hurt some people. And those people are like my Shiva's Rebbitzin, who, said she avoided, or that other Rebbe of mine. And some people know, some people don't, and I want to protect his privacy. And like he said, please, by chasana, don't ruin my simcha by playing this music. And the musician, that I think that's the archetype that I want to bring out. And the musician, how can you have a chasana without Shlomo? You can have a chasana without Shlomo Carlebach. And dealing with that dichotomy. I mean, I reflect on. I remember one time, it was Shabbos Mevorach in ER, and they asked me to come hold the Sefer Torah by Shabbos Mevorachin, and the Chazan sang the tune of Hatikva by Shabbos Mevorachin in a shul in Queens. And I couldn't leave, and I had to stand there and listen to that, and it was painful. And as painful as that was for me, can you imagine if you were actually a victim of somebody, and then in shul, in the holy place, by davening, you want to stay by davening, and then they're singing the songs of someone who abused you, it would hurt, and it would cause a lot of trauma. So that's what it comes down to. We don't want to hurt anybody. And so to be respectful, that you never know who's there in the shul who might have been hurt by this person, maybe it's better not to use his songs. I don't know. And the thing is, if it's all, when it's all, what do they call the word? Consensual. That's a different thing. That's between a person and Hashem. But when it's not, it's crossing a certain line, right? Not that the Avera part. Well, now it's Benad al-Muchavera also, and it seems that he crossed that line. From people from Edom Nemonim, meaning I don't consider Lilith magazine to have any Nemonis, but Rebbeim of mine who told me differently, I think there's some Nemonis there. So that's what it comes down to. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. We'll see you all later. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, and we will, we'll talk a little bit more. All right. I'm sorry that it was so long. All right, we'll talk later. How do I turn this thing off? Come on.